Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
Here.
Councilmember Keim.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez. Councilmember Sanchez.
Here.
And if you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, if we could have the council join us out here in front and all the department directors for our Employee Service Awards.
Good evening, Mayor Weiss, council members, department directors, and audience. It is with great pleasure that we present to you tonight employees who have reached the admirable accomplishment of 20 and 30 years of service with the City of Oceanside. When your name is called, please come forward to receive your award. Nathan Mertz. Nathan started his career with the City of Oceanside in December of 1999 as a planner in the Development Service Department. Nathan has held positions within the Development Services, Parks and Recreation, and Public Works Department. While working full-time, Nathan received his master's degree in Public Administration from Cal State University of Long Beach in 2010. Please join me in congratulating Nathan on 20 years of service.
All right, Nathan.
Thank you, Nathan. Bonnie Stauffer. Bonnie joined the City of Oceanside as a dispatcher with the Police Department in November of 1999. Bonnie has been a reliable asset to the department. Most recently, Bonnie oversaw the Next Gen 911 project that Oceanside was asked to participate in the pilot of, along with several other agencies in the county. With Bonnie's guidance, the City of Oceanside became the first agency to pass the initial review of the project and has prepared Oceanside to go live as soon as the rest of the county is. As the current Public Safety Communication Manager, Bonnie has dedicated her time to providing excellent customer service to our community. Thank you, Bonnie, for 20 years of your service. Next, we have those who have served 30 years. Teresa Gomez. Teresa launched her career with the City of Oceanside in 1989 as a customer service representative in our finance department. Teresa moved to the Water Utilities Department in 2011 and has been actively involved in the rate setting process, budgeting, water conservation, and public outreach programs. As a senior management analyst, Teresa's extensive customer service experience and ability to resolve conflict is invaluable to the department. Let's congratulate Teresa for 30 years of service. I don't think he came. That concludes our service awards for tonight. Once again, thank you for your dedication. Congratulations. Oh, I'm so sorry. Officer Ed Lane. Officer Lane has dedicated his career to protecting the community of Oceanside as a police officer since 1989. Officer Lane has served on various assignments while with the city, including patrol and investigations. In 2016, Officer Lane became a school resource officer and has been instrumental in providing a safe learning environment for the students and faculty of Oceanside Unified School District. Officer Lane has served the citizens of Oceanside honorably for 30 years, and we are a better and safer community as a result. On behalf of the men and women of the Oceanside Police Department and the agency, we thank you, Officer Lane, for your dedication to the community and Oceanside, and look forward to your continued service. That concludes our service awards for tonight.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we also have, when they get here, a presentation by Sandag on the Census 2020. Once they get here, we'll interrupt where we are and go to them. I think they took the train, so they're really late. Mr. Mullen?
Thank you. I'll go ahead and give the closed session report. Council met in closed session to discuss item 1 on the agenda, conference with labor negotiator involving the status of negotiations with the Oceanside Police Management Association. There's no action to report on that item. Item 2, conference with legal counsel on the status of existing litigation. Workers' compensation case, Brian Bonasic versus City of Oceanside. Council did meet and give direction on that item. There's no reportable action at this time.
With that, we'll go to our consent calendar, which are items 4 through 23. Do we have any speakers?
No speakers.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Move adoption.
And please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
We will go to item 24, our first general item, which is the adoption of resolutions authorizing submissions for applications.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Carrie Dale, Water Utilities Director, here to present on item number 24, which is approval of resolutions for WIFIA loan applications to the United States Environmental Protection Agency. With me this evening are Brian Forbath with Stradling and Yoka, Carlson and Roth, Jane McPherson of the Financial Services Department, and Lindsay Leahy, our Principal Water Engineer. Staff is recommending that Council adopt 2 resolutions authorizing the submittal of 2 applications to the United States Environmental Protection Agency for 2 Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act loans, or WIFIA loans. The action is also intended to authorize the city manager or designee to negotiate terms and conditions and execute related loan documents. Tonight's action also introduces an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code. Staff responded to an April 2019 Notice of Funding Availability, which made $6 billion available nationwide under the EPA WIFIA loan program. Funding was open to specific project types, such as those that would recharge aquifers, implement water recycling, implement alternative water supplies, as well as energy efficiency projects. Staff worked to develop 2 letters of interest and submitted those to the EPA in the beginning of July of 2019. The water letter of interest included 2 projects, Pure Water Oceanside, as well as the lower recycled water package. The sewer letter of interest included the Buccaneer Lift Station and Force Main projects. I need to tell you that the letter of interest is really a misnomer. It is quite a substantial document that we submitted as part of the package. Once we submitted the package to EPA, it underwent an eligibility screening, a preliminary creditworthiness assessment, a preliminary engineering feasibility analysis, and selection scoring criteria, including the readiness to proceed. We were notified in October that of the 51 projects that were submitted nationwide, 38 were selected, including both of those that Oceanside had submitted. The next phase of the process includes submitting applications, and staff is currently preparing those and will be ready to submit the water application in the coming weeks. The sewer application will be submitted in the summer of 2020. Once submitted to EPA, they undergo an additional detailed financial and engineering review of each of the projects. During that review, WIFIA proposes terms and conditions and negotiates a loan agreement with the city. We have received a draft agreement, and that has been reviewed by the city attorney's office, and the terms are acceptable. The EPA underwriter has also clarified with us that the project must comply with several other requirements, including the National Environmental Protection Act, or NEPA, the American Iron and Steel requirements, floodplain management standards, and the Davis-Bacon Wage Act. In speaking with our underwriter at EPA, we anticipate that the documents will close for the water loan in approximately 4 months, or the beginning of April 2020. Tonight's action also includes introduction of an ordinance to provide direct statutory authority in the municipal code to provide the note in connection with the loan and to issue revenue bonds necessary for completion of the projects under consideration. The WIFIA loans may be used to fund up to 49% of the project costs. And in Oceanside's letter of interest for water, it included the funding amounts shown here for Pure Water Oceanside, as well as the lower recycled water projects. The letter of interest for the sewer also included the Buccaneer Pump Station and Force Main at $42.6 million. Staff will be submitting 2 separate applications, one for water, one for sewer. The total funding requested is $57 million for the water utility and includes an annual estimated payment of $2.7 million. For the sewer utility is $47 million with an annual payment of $2.2 million. Each application must be accompanied by a $100,000 application fee, which reimburses EPA for legal, engineering, and financial advisory services related to reviewing the application. There's also a credit processing fee of $250,000 per application, and this also reimburses EPA for any additional costs associated with processing the loan. If we were to issue a comparable amount of debt through a bond, those costs would be approximately $400,000 for a $100 million bond issuance. We see savings in the favorable interest rate that WIFIA offers. That interest rate is no less than the yield on the U.S. Treasury securities of a similar maturity to that of the WIFIA credit assistance at the time that the loan is finalized. The current rate today is 2.29% for WIFIA. Under a similar bond issuance, for instance, the bond that was issued for the pool, the rate was 3.46%. If we compared those two interest rates with a $57 million debt issuance for the water utility over a 30-year payback term, under the WIFIA loan, the total interest is $22 million, and under a municipal bond, it is $35 million. So over a 30-year term, there's a savings of $13 million, or approximately $434,000 per year. For the sewer utility, for a $47 million issuance with WIFIA, the interest is $18 million. With a bond, it would be $29 million. So savings of $10 million over the 30-year term, or $358,000 per year. Staff is recommending that the City Council adopt the two resolutions authorizing submittal of the applications, authorize the city manager or designee to negotiate the terms and conditions, and to execute related loan documents, and to introduce an ordinance to amend Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code. With that, our team is available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any public?
No public.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Thank you. And how often do they offer these kind of terms for loans in funding water projects? How often does it happen?
Councilmember Sanchez, honorable council members, my understanding is that this is the third time that WIFIA has had an offering, and they have completed the loan documents for 13 projects during those issuances.
Right. So it hasn't really been very often that they've offered this kind of loan to cities like ours.
Correct.
Yeah. And it was pretty competitive for California. We were one of, 13?
I don't know the total number of projects that were approved in California. I think we're 2 of 3 in San Diego County.
Oh, wow. Well, it seems we're on track with our water projects. This is something that we have been planning and thinking about, and reaching our goal of 50% for providing our own water resources. So it does come at a really opportune time. So I am going to move that we adopt the 2 resolutions. And I know that the costs have been taken into consideration with respect to the water rates that we just approved. So this is a difficult time, but I think that what we need to do is, make sure that the community understands that these projects that are pretty expensive are going to get us to the point where we will be able to have our own water sources, and will infiltrate us from the higher costs later on from the water authority. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Keim?
I think the Pure Water project is important. I mean, the fact that we are one of the only municipalities in the county to have that aquifer to be able to take advantage of this. I mean, I think water instability is probably one of the most pressing issues long term. I think we forget about it after we have a couple wet years. And then also, I mean, not only is a project important, but I mean, we're saving, Ms. Dale, we're saving $23 million just on doing the WIFIA loan as opposed to a standard bond.
Correct.
So, and we just recently raised water rates. What could that $23 million be used for in the future as we go over this 30 years?
Well, we still need to do some evaluation, some fine-tuning of how that looks on the long-term financial projections, but ultimately that decreases the amount that we may need to raise rates in the future. So we'll see savings in the long term.
I think this is a good strategy. We are working, I know city staff is working hard to not have to raise rates, and looking at every available funding option so we can save money where we can, get the project going, and then, keep our rates stable. So thank you. Nice. A second Councilwoman Sanchez's motion.
Deputy Mayor Feller?
Thank you. The issue for us is the stability of our system, I think, and we are you know, we may never get to 210,000 people, but in this, something's going to happen in the future to have to upgrade the sewers and the water and the sewer lines and increase capacity. But I think you're doing an outstanding job of seeing into the future. You look at San Diego and they say, oh, well, we were going to fix that pipeline in the coming budget. Well, as 2.5 feet of water rolling down through a golf course because of a broken line. So we want to be prepared, and so I thank you for that.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Mullen?
Okay, you have the two resolutions, but we're also introducing the ordinance amending the municipal code. This is the introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside amending Chapter 2, Article 9, Division 2 by the addition of Section 2.53 to provide procedures for the sale and issuance of revenue bonds.
Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
We got item 25, which is approval of plans and specifications for the Pure Water Advanced Water Purification Facility. And we'll start with Lindsay.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Lindsay Leahy, Water Utilities Department, Principal Water Engineer. Tonight, we're here to discuss the Pure Water Oceanside Advanced Water Purification Facility Contract Award. Staff recommends that City Council approve plans and specifications for the Pure Water Oceanside Advanced Water Purification Facility, award a contract in an amount not to exceed $54,815,000 to Shimmick Construction Company, approve a professional services agreement with Parsons in the amount not to exceed $4,248,870 for construction management services of the contract, and approve an Amendment 1 for professional service agreement with Tetra Tech in the amount of $1,038,235 for engineering support during construction. So how we got here, about 10 years ago, City Council in a workshop gave the Water Utilities Department a goal to increase our local water supply to 50% by the year 2030. Currently, we import just under 90% of our water for the city, and we currently use about 10% of our local supply, or 10% of our supply is a local supply provided by our groundwater basin. After the first phase, which is this phase that you're seeing here tonight, we would be decreasing our imported water to about 67%, and by the year 2030, the plan is to decrease that local supply, or that imported water, to 44%, and increasing our local supply to about 56%. So there's multiple phases in this Pure Water project. Phase 1 was the design of the project itself. Phase 2 actually consists of 5 separate construction contracts. 2A is the Advanced Water Purification Facility and San Luis Rey modifications. 2B1 and 2B2 are both pipeline contracts from the San Luis Rey plant to the injection wells. 2C is the injection well construction itself, and 2D is the monitoring wells for the project. The overall footprint of the project extends from our San Luis Rey water reclamation facility off of North River Road. As you can see on the image, it's at the north end of, or the top of that image. The Advanced Water Purification Facility is shown with the green square at the top of that image. The green line outlines the conveyance pipeline, which leads to the green and white circles towards the bottom of the image, which represents the injection well location. You'll see there's a blue and white circle that represents one of the 3 monitoring wells for the project. The other 2 monitoring wells are just outside this image. So tonight's project, what we're bringing before you is the Phase 2A Advanced Water Purification Facility and San Luis Rey modifications. What that includes is equipping our San Luis Rey Plant 2 facilities, constructing the Advanced Water Purification Treatment Plant, and constructing the Advanced Water Purification Pump Station. Here's a closer look at our San Luis Rey facility. The areas outlined with just the blue outline show that there's existing infrastructure that we built back in the early 2000s to anticipate the future flows into the plant for future water use. Those facilities were never outfitted with equipment and haven't been used. We would, in this project, be equipping those facilities with the equipment needed to treat the water for the project and be able to use the existing civil and structural infrastructure that's there. The dark blue square towards the bottom is currently it was used as a reservoir, and that's going to be the location of the future advanced water treatment or advanced water purification facility. This is a look of a computer rendering of the future advanced water purification facility, as well as an image of the existing administrative building at San Luis Rey. So Pure Water Oceanside as a whole is a much larger process than what we're seeing tonight. There's multiple steps and stages in that process. The advanced water purification facility itself is just looking at stages 1 through 3 of this, which I'll kind of glance over, which is filtration, reverse osmosis, ultraviolet light, and advanced oxidation, and I'll expand on these in a future slide. Once that water leaves the treatment plant, we are then going to be injecting the advanced treated water into the groundwater aquifer. That water travels through the aquifer for about 6 to 7 months, where we will later pull it out of the groundwater or ground and treat it at our existing Mission Basin groundwater purification facility. This is what we currently use to pull out the groundwater and treat it and provide to the citizens in the community of Oceanside. And that facility will just continue to be used. So for the advanced purification system, what that entails is 3 additional steps. We take the recycled water that's currently being provided from San Luis Rey, and we put it through a microfiltration process. What this does is remove any particles 300 times smaller than a human hair from the water. It then advances to a reverse osmosis process, which removes any particles 100 times smaller than a human hair. This is similar to what we see at desalination plants. It removes salts, viruses, microplastics, pharmaceuticals, and other items from the water. The final step of this advanced purification process is the ultraviolet light advanced oxidation. And what this does is essentially polishes the water and kills off any remaining organics that could be in the water. These are similar processes as used for baby food jars and medical equipment to sterilize those items. So it's well known in the industry and it's highly reliable. Because this is a new project for the city of Oceanside, the department has began a very in-depth outreach program throughout the city. We have taken on 12 speakers' presentations at different community groups. We held a World of Water Day at San Luis Rey, where we introduced the project with our informational video to over 500 attendees, as well as gave tours of the facility and the future expansion of the site. We have provided 4 or 5 public tours to the community as requested, and we plan to start tours in 2020 to the Oceanside schools. Additionally, we've been included in over 10 media coverage stories in print as well as on live TV. And we've sent out public surveys and received over 500 responses about the project. And these community outreach efforts will continue through construction and into implementation of this project. So how we got here. After the goal was given to us, we took an endeavor to look into a recycled water master plan and what that would look like for the city of Oceanside. From that, we also proceeded with looking into an indirect potable reuse study, which is essentially what pure water is indirect potable reuse. At the same time, we also looked at the harbor desalination feasibility study. And as you can see, those all kind of finished in 2015, 2016, 2017. So we really wanted to look at what our options were. From the results of the 2016 and 2017 studies, it was decided to move forward with indirect potable reuse because of it was a less expensive option to the utility and to its ratepayers. Harbor desalination is still a very viable option for the city if it chooses to increase its local supply beyond the 50%. That is our current goal. However, due to costs, it's recommended to proceed at a later date. So from that time, we, in 2018, issued a professional services agreement with Tetra Tech for the design of Pure Water Oceanside. In December of 2018, Planning Commission adopted our mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program and approved our conditional use permit for Pure Water Oceanside. October of 2019, we advertised the advanced water purification facility for bid, and in November of 2019, we opened our public bid. Another thing that occurred during this time frame was the approval of Senate Bill 606. And what this looks at is the urban water use calculations and the state mandating how much water each city can use and how that water is calculated. One of the stipulations in that Senate bill is there is a bonus incentive for potable reuse facilities, and whether they're considered new or existing, you get a different bonus incentive. So for a new facility, you only get 10% of a bonus incentive in that calculation. For an existing facility, you get an extra 5%. And I'll kind of go into that a little bit more. But what makes up an existing facility? An existing facility has an environmental document that's approved no later than January 1st, 2019, which we did in December of 2018. And it has an operational facility no later than January 1st, 2022. So that 2022 date is our next deadline that we're trying to hit and our big target. We've calculated that with this urban water objective, what that would mean is that the city, if we did not make that 2022 date, that the city would have to increase our water conservation efforts within the utility and within the city boundaries. And what that could cost is up to $350,000 per year in perpetuity due to these additional conservation efforts that we have to implement. So again, that is one of our main goals, is trying to get the project online by January 1st, 2022, and avoid those $350,000 per year expenses to the utility. So as I mentioned, November of 2019, we opened bids publicly, and we received 3 bids, with Shimmick Construction Company being the apparent low bidder at $54,815,000. The engineer's estimate was calculated at $48 million, and so the discrepancy between the low bid and the engineer's estimate, one is the early completion incentive payments. In part of this contract, in order to meet that January 1st, 2022 date, we have included an early incentive payment. That if the contractor completes the project, for every day they complete it early before that January 1st date, they can receive an additional $23,500 for a maximum of $2 million incentive. On the alternate end, we've included a very high liquidated damage, which is not normally included. If the contractor misses that date by even a day, that high liquidated damage is a $2 million flat fee that the contractor would owe to the city for missing that date. And how we came up with that calculation is that's approximately 4 years of that fee that we would be paying due to missing the Senate Bill 606 deadline. So that $350,000 over 4 years. The other discrepancy is there's additional intricate soils work that could have resulted in additional costs to the contract, as well as a vibrant construction market. There's a lot of work out there, and contractors can kind of pick and choose what they want to bid on. That being said, all 3 bids that were received were deemed competitive as well as responsive. The anticipated schedule for the project is a contract award as of tonight. Notice to proceed on January 2nd, 2020, with authorization for the contractor to mobilize and begin work on January 3rd, 2020. The advanced water purification facility to be online by January 1st, 2022, with a contract completion date of July 6, 2022. And just to address the discrepancy between those 2 dates, the facility needs to be online and producing water by January 1st. However, there could be ancillary work like architecture, landscaping, other items that the contractor can complete after that January 1st date. As far as construction management, staff issued a request for proposals and received 2 proposals for the work. Interviews were conducted in November of both firms, and Parsons was ranked the highest based on qualifications as well as had lowest cost. The overall cost breakdown of the project, quite detailed, so I'll try to walk you through it. On the top line, the current Phase 2 of Pure Water Oceanside, the project as a whole, has an appropriated budget of just under $27.7 million, with future appropriations as depicted in our budget projections of $33.5 and $14.5 million per the upcoming fiscal years. For Phase 2A, the project costs, as we've discussed, for construction with Shimmick of $54.8 million, a construction contingency of 10%, construction management for Parsons of $4.2 million, engineering support during the project, as well as an estimated continued community outreach, totaling a project total for Phase 2A of $65,783,605. With the assumed appropriated or anticipated appropriated budget in the future fiscal years, this shows that we will have a remaining $10 million in the project account. The overall funding sources for the project as a whole, not just Phase 2A, is that we've been awarded a integrated regional water management grant of $115 million. We have $33.8 million in our fixed asset fund balance. As discussed in our previous item, an EPA WIFIA loan of $38.8 million, as well as we've applied and requested $12.4 million from the Bureau of Reclamation Wind Grant. And I want to note that any money that comes from that Bureau of Reclamation Wind Grant will directly offset any funds that we use from the fund balance. With that, staff recommends that City Council approve plans and specifications for the Pure Water Oceanside Advanced Water Purification Facility, award a contract to Shimmick for $54,815,000, approve a professional service agreement with Parsons for $4,248,870, and approve Amendment 1 with Tetra Tech for $1,038,235. And we're available for any questions.
Thank you. Any
Thank
public?
you.
No public.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Well, this is an historic event today, isn't it? And I want to thank the Oceanside public for supporting this. I mean, by not having anybody here saying we shouldn't be going down this road. Of course, we have been making our way to this point. And it's exciting that we are really being innovative and really, moving into the future. So this is, as I said, a really historic, wonderful time for us. For the citizens of Oceanside, I want to congratulate the citizens for, listening to these conversations and realizing how critical this is, because we are, in fact, water is the most precious resource that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and move approval of the plans and specifications and approve the agreements.
Deputy Mayor Feller?
I'll second that. You said, Lindsay, in the presentation, you got 500 responses back, and that is out of how many? Is that citywide, 60,000?
Deputy Mayor Feller, Honorable Mayor, City Council, I believe that we included the survey in our bill inserts as well as online, and so we received over 500 responses.
But it was out of the total building within the city?
Oh, over 45,000 in the bill inserts,
okay.
Yes.
And the gap between approval in December of 2018 to going out for bid is Is that crucial that it was 10, 11 months between the approval and going out to bid? Is that a critical time? I mean, would it have affected the timeline for finishing everything before the?
Deputy Mayor Feller, Honorable Mayor, City Council, we have expedited and really been pushing the schedule on the designers for this whole project from the beginning. The project, when it was submitted to Planning Commission in December of 2018, was like between a 30 and 60% design for the facility, and really looks at the concept of the project and the environmental impacts, as well as how it will impact the city and the neighbors. So the design continued for those 11 months, as well as issuing for bid and other permits.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the hard work. You've answered a lot of questions in the past, so let's get on with it.
I just have one question for Carrie. We opened bids on November 12th, but we're approving plans and specifications tonight?
Honorable Mayor, Wise City Council, part of, and maybe Attorney Mullen can help, but part of the process, is my understanding, is that City Council needs to approve plans and specs in order to indemnify themselves, the city, from any implications of the contract. It doesn't need to necessarily happen before we go to bid. And I believe there was an ordinance change that allows us to not come to City Council any further to approve plans and specs, and authorizes the city engineer, I believe as of the beginning of this month, to approve those plans and specifications.
Thank you. Do you need to say anything, Mr. Forbath? We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
So before we go to item 26, I understand the Sandag representatives are here, and Megan, if you could come up for the 2020 ceremonial check presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss, and residents of City of Oceanside and our City Council. I'm Megan Crooks, Interim Neighborhood Services Director, and I'd like to welcome Darlene Molmat with Regional Census Data Center, and Ray Major, Chief Data Analytics Office from the city, or from Sandag. We're here to present an update on the Census 2020, and I'm going to hand the microphone over to you for the ceremonial piece.
Thank you very much. So, my name is Ray Major. I'm the Chief Analytic Officer at the San Diego Association of Governments, and one of my jobs is to work with the complete Census Count Committee. And I've been working a lot with Cecilia and Councilmember Sanchez on this particular effort. The 2020 census is going to kick off early next year. And it is extremely important that everybody gets counted in the census. The reason for that is that federal appropriations come based upon the number of people that we count. And so Sandag has been working closely with cities like Oceanside and through the Complete Count Committee to figure out how we were going to do this. And we are very excited and honored to present you with a check today for $35,000 to work on that effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray. We have our City of Oceanside census shirts to give to you, as well. The City Council all received one this evening. Cecilia. And we'd just like to add, for the residents, it's important that everybody participate in the census survey. Everybody counts, and everybody doing a complete survey helps the city receive their fair share of federal funding towards important services and programs to the city of Oceanside. Every individual matters. The survey will be available online and by telephone as well by mail this year, and by online and over the phone, it will be available in 13 languages. Invitations will start to be received by residents between March 12th and March 24th, and you will have through the month of April to participate in that survey, and city staff will be out motivating everybody to get their surveys in and to make sure that the city of Oceanside gets a complete count. We'll be working with so many of the city's partners within the city of Oceanside and all of our neighborhood groups to make sure that we get the word out and get the most complete survey count that we can and ensure the proper funding for the city of Oceanside. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you very much, and thank you for the check. I feel like Happy Gilmore.
Can I add a few? Hi, darling. How are you doing? Thank you. If I can add to this, Peter, Mr. Weiss. Okay, thank you. So I have been appointed to the working group for Sandag on this committee, Census 2020, and I have to say it's been a really good experience working with the other jurisdictions and what other jurisdictions, learning from other jurisdictions and what they're coming up with in terms of materials and like giveaways, like this T-shirt that you've seen today that has several languages. And then with the City of Oceanside logo on the back. Was very, very popular at the Phil-Am Holiday Ball. City of Oceanside has the most census tracts in the North County that are hard to count. 9, and added to that, I think we at the city were adding to that number because it did not include our homeless community in the riverbed. So we have the hard to count. This is what, once every 10 years. 10 years ago, we were undercounted, which is why we were not able to compete as well for, say, grants. This is going to be so critical for the next 10 years as we go forward to address our growing community. So the hard to count communities are identified as communities of color, homeless, 0 to 5, that's a very, very critical one, and veterans. So I'm very proud of the fact that we have started to go out to our various communities and, you know, having the Phil-Am FACO actually taking the lead and creating their own first committee in Oceanside, actually in the county. So thank you for your guidance as we go through this. We only have 3 more meetings before April 1st. And that's when it's going to start, April 1st, right? So thank you very much. Looking forward to working with the community of Oceanside. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been asked to move up the off-agenda items because we have some young people who need to get home, so we'll go to item 31. Mr.
Our first speaker is Arlene Hammerschmidt, to be followed by Julie Cabrera, to be followed by Janice Pingley.
Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Arlene Hammerschmidt on Ivy Road in Fire Mountain. Due to my experiences in the last 3 weeks collecting signatures for the referendum petition, I would like to recommend to the city an amendment or changing a city ordinance that is designed to prevent aggressive signature gathering and designed to, with the intent of keeping customers from being harassed by signature gatherers. And what I want to tell you is that this is what an OPD member of our OPD informed me of, that was the intention, that there's an ordinance on the books, that it's relatively new, and the intention is that customers do not feel harassed. But if the customer feels harassed, then they report it to the manager, and the manager can ask all the petitioners to leave. However, the paid gatherers, AKA blockers, AKA henchmen, that are hired are actually working.
I think you meant goons, right?
No, I'm avoiding that term.
No.
They're actually working this ordinance so that members of the public are being restricted from exercising our civil duty and right to be informed and sign a referendum. I have personally been screamed at in my ear by a large man reaching over my shoulder and so close to me that I could not back up without bumping into him. He called OPD on us. And I know that's not the intent of this ordinance, so I urge council to please look into this, take it up, and make amendments so that it serves the purpose that it's intended to serve, which is to keep people from being harassed, find the perpetrator. Maybe a written complaint instead of a verbal complaint. Something, because it's not working as it's intended right now. I thank you very much for your attention.
Julie Cabrera, to be followed by Janice Pingley, to be followed by Jocelyn Mariquette.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm on the youth board at Clean Earth for Kids, and today I would like to talk to you and ask you to keep our park safe and just use grass instead of synthetic grass. And synthetic turf, it has crumb rubber, and if you're wondering what that is, it's like tire from the dump, and it's just cut up into small pieces, and it's being used on the turf. And crumb rubber has toxic chemicals such as benothiazole, carbon black, and heavy metals. These toxic chemicals can cause birth defects, and they can cause cancer. Children have increased exposure to toxic chemicals due to their unique way of how they interact with the environment. I have seen this firsthand because I have seen students and even high schoolers during games or before games, they'll sit on the turf, and then because they're waiting and they get bored, they start digging into the turf, and I've even seen some high schoolers eat the turf because they just don't know. And I have also seen them pull out the grass. Carbon black makes up about 20 to 40% of crumb rubber. It has also been identified as a cancer-causing chemical. And crumb rubber also contains latex, and many students and children are allergic to latex rubber. And because they're allergic, it could cause allergic reactions, and they don't even know that. And crumb rubber is also dangerous because it can reach unsafe temperatures. So let's say we were playing a game and it was 98 degrees. The turf would be about 200 degrees. And so in conclusion, I would like to ask you guys to stop turf on parks and on public lands. Thank you.
Janice Pingley, to be followed by Jocelyn Mariquette, to be followed by Gabby Mariquette.
Hi, my name is Janice Pingley, and I'm with the Clean Earth for Kids Youth Board. We are here to ask you not to place synthetic turf on our public properties. Most people don't know that the black dots on synthetic turf are ground up tires, mostly from trash and dumps. However, many people don't know that these ground up tires contain carcinogens as well as mercury, benzene, and arsenic. The Ecology Center has shown that both the grass-like plains and the backing of artificial turf contains highly toxic fluorinated chemicals known as PFAs or polyfluoroalkyl substances. It is also said not to let children with bare feet onto the synthetic turf and to keep younger children and babies away from the turf to prevent indigestion. Also to wash anything that falls onto the ground and to shower as soon as possible or immediately after getting on it. However, many people don't know that and until a health problem has occurred. I am a high school track and field athlete and sees many people come home with synthetic turf in their shoes or in their gear. And I also have asthma, so it also affects my daily life. Also, a single deconstruction of these fields weighs about 44,000 pounds. 1,000 of these fields deconstruction is about 80 million square feet, and together it would weigh roughly about 440 million pounds. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Jocelyn, to be followed by Gabby Mariquette, to be followed by Gideon Phillips.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn from cleanearthforkids.org. Please don't put synthetic turf in our parks. Synthetic turf is slick. This can cause knee injuries. Research shows that knee injuries rates increase on turf compared to grass. I have seen kids slip on turf so many times. Even if you have cleats, the chances of falling are still high. Overall, synthetic turf is replacing grass fields, yet it is causing more knee injuries and are occurring from synthetic turfs. Thank you.
Gabby Mariquette, to be followed by Gideon Phillips, to be followed by Lee Phillips.
Okay. Hi, I'm Gabriella Natali, and I'm also here with CleanKidsForEarth.org. So today I'm going to also be speaking on behalf of the underestimated but very important issue of synthetic turf. So what people don't know is that 70% of fields contain synthetic turf with MRSA, which is an antibiotic-resistant infection which causes hospitalization. This and biocides are contained in synthetic turf, and this can lead to infections and diseases such as ammonia, suppresses, and bloodstream infections that are all potentially fatal. They also are made of tire particles, and tire particles are carcinogens, like we were saying, and these are a hazardous waste product. Not only are they physically dangerous, but they're also financially dangerous. So they cost about $7 to $15 per square foot, and it costs twice more than regular grass to implement them and remove them. They also contain 69 chemicals, which are all toxic, and it is not recommended for children to walk or touch them. Thank you.
Gideon Phillips, to be followed by Lee Phillips, to be followed by Victoria Valderas.
Hello. I just want to say a quick fact of sorts. So there are currently 58 different chemicals that are untested in AstroTurf right now, and those could potentially be dangerous, be safe. We don't know what they are. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Lee Phillips.
Hello, my name is Lee Phillips. To have synthetic turf, the grass underneath is killed with pesticides. How can synthetic turf be safe when there are many known toxic chemicals and 58 chemicals that have never been tested? We believe our fields should be free and safe. Synthetic turf fields are on crumbled rubber, crumbled up tires that contain many carcinogens, chemicals that cause cancer. Would you want your toddlers playing on that?
Victoria, to be followed by Suzanne Hume.
Hi, my name is Victoria. 1 minute of idling is greater than 3 packs of cigarettes.
So we're We're really excited for the no idling signs to be put into our parks. We also wanted to announce at this time, if you haven't heard the great news, Clean Earth for Kids is a recipient of a $100,000 grant that will be going to Oceanside Unified School District and Vista Unified School District for no idling signs. So that's awesome. So kids, this is an example of our contests. So the students make the no idling signs, and the designs are printed on metal signs. It costs $15, and you can attach it to an existing pole. And as Victoria said, and I thought it was really important for her to be up here, because it was Victoria who, when we were outside, saw that truck idling on the sidewalk and said, you know, we need to stop that. That's not okay for the kids. So we're really excited that no idling is in our climate action plan in Oceanside. We're hopefully getting this in the Vista climate action plan as well. It would be amazing, because if we can reduce the 16 minutes of idling where people are just sitting in their cars, not in traffic, this can reduce over 100,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide in 1 year in the city of Oceanside. This goes a far way to help us reach our goals. So the other thing we wanted to say was many students, such as Victoria, play in Buchanan Park and others. We're really excited about the city getting out the pesticides. So we don't want to add pesticides by killing the grass and using synthetic turf. We'd like it to be kept natural. And since we're on a roll with the state with our $100,000 grant, and we're so new, I mean, this is huge. We'll apply for grants, additional grants for trees, just as we're planting trees on every campus in Oceanside and Vista Unified, several trees on every campus. We'll also apply for those grants and have been for our parks. It's very important to us. We want to apply for lighting. We agree. More playing fields are needed. We just don't want the synthetic turf. Let us know how we can help. We're cleanearthforkids.org. Thank you.
Our next speakers are John Bottorff, to be followed by Roger Davenport, to be followed by Teresa Masters.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Bottorff. I'll be very brief. Thank you for moving it up, by the way. So all of it comes down for synthetic turf, comes down to the crumb rubber. So the EPA and the CDC are currently doing an investigation to do a risk assessment. They're gathering data because there's simply not enough data and research to make a risk assessment. Now, at the same time, the EPA has said that car tires they contain heavy metals, things like arsenic and carcinogens. Now, crumb rubber is simply tires that has been ground up and then the metal and the fabric removed. So logically, if a tire had carcinogens in it, grinding it up does not magically remove the carcinogens. So crumb rubber absolutely contains carcinogens. It contains heavy metals, and we should not be exposed to it. Now, the new turf that they're going to put in Carlsbad, even though there's a lot of people objected and they did not want it because of the potential health concerns, Carlsbad spent an extra $150,000 to get an upgraded pellets. So they take the crumb rubber and they coat it with acrylic and polyurethane. So now our children are, instead of just swallowing and dealing with crumb rubber, now they're dealing with crumb rubber along with acrylic and polyurethane. All of these pellets end up in our water system, and the last thing we need into our water system, because we all know that water is so important, is to have more plastic, more rubber in our water. And as we all know from synthetic turf, every year you have to add rubber to the turf because it gets washed away, it gets blown away, it ends up in people's shoes. So absolutely, we don't want synthetic turf in Oceanside. It's not going to be safe, and it will take EPA years to someday maybe come out and say, yeah, you probably shouldn't use it. So let's move in the right direction before something bad happens. So thank you so much.
Roger Davenport, to be followed by Teresa Masters.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and staff. Roger Davenport, 541 Crouch Street. I want to talk a little bit about the developer of the proposed North River Farm subdivision, Integral Communities. They've showed a pattern of poor project design, leading to many recommendations to deny their project, misleading information, unethical actions and tactics, and using money to buy elections and favors. For example, who thinks that bringing in the Solutions for Change folks 6 weeks ago to fill seats in this chamber was an ethical move? Show of hands. Okay. Now, in the past few weeks, like Eileen, I've experienced firsthand their tactics of using hired hench people to disrupt, harass, overwhelm, and intimidate people. Trying to get signatures for a community petition, I've experienced all of the things that are listed at the center of the page here. I won't go through them, you can read them later. I find this behavior unacceptable. Integral community uses lies, misinformation, unethical actions, and massive applications of money to, quote, neutralize any opposition, unquote, and get their way. Is this really a company with which we want to do business? What makes you think that they will act ethically to do what they promised once they start building North River Farms? If this is business as usual, we need to change businesses.
I'll put it back if you want.
No problem. So, having observed the way integral communities interacts with our Oceanside community, I think we need to find a better partner to help Oceanside develop in a smart way, without money, unethical tactics, and lies determining the results. I call on the City Council to revoke their poor decision to rezone this property for North River Farms and deny the project, and urge them to be very cautious about ever doing business with them in the future. I also call on the Council to implement Measure AF3 of our Climate Action Plan and pursue preservation of this property as agricultural land forever using an agricultural easement. Particularly, the strategy in page 339 of the Climate Action Plan states that between 2020 and 2024, we should identify internal or external funding sources for minimum matching funds for up to 250 acres of agricultural preservation easements. Well, 2020 is on us in a couple of weeks. Parcel land in question is less than 250 acres, so this would seem to be an ideal first agricultural preservation project. Why not actually preserve this as a farm rather than develop it as a housing tract? Thank you.
Teresa Masters?
I have copies for the council.
Hello, City Council. Here I am again. I was going to speak on one thing. After listening to these children present an issue which was originally in women's soccer when they were giving them false, phony turf to play on, and the men were playing on grass. So this is not a new issue at all. And these children are showing brave to stand up here, knees quivering, speaking to a bunch of adults who usually this to them. This artificial turf will wind up as carpet in the city dumps in the 10 to 12 year as carpet. And it's not going to be anything that will add to the earth, keep the dumps small. So you will have a big problem in the future. And it's best to listen to these children before they're in a position to vote, because when they're in a position to vote, things are going to look a lot different. So thank you for that. I want to add to what Arlene and others are saying. I was in the shopping center at Sprouts early in this signature campaign, and I saw 3 people with the clipboards gathering. They had just been chased away from 2 different locations in that public. So I signed their petition right at that time, and I went over to Sprouts I'm 5'1". This gentleman had to be that much atop of me, this way, intimidating me and giving me lies about Proposition 13, which is an issue for a lot of people who want to keep the house taxes affordable. So please, I agree with said before. You cannot just let people go out and confront people because they want to and they're being paid to do so. So, yeah, pay attention. We're your citizens as well. And it was not okay. It wasn't okay down at the harbor. It wasn't okay anyplace else I saw them. Thank you.
With that, we'll go to our 6 o'clock public hearing item, item 28, which is resolutions regarding the fire department fees, and we'll open the public hearing and start with disclosures.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we could do
Only
29
staff.
really quickly for the continuance request.
So, regarding item 29, we'll do item 29. Before we open the public hearing, we've had a request from both several of the residents and the appellant's attorney to continue the hearing. I will entertain a motion if we would like to continue that. Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. The city did receive a request from the applicant for a continuance of 1 month. Today I was able to reach out to parties that were interested at the Planning Commission who prepared this past week for this hearing. And after some discussion, they agreed to, as a professional courtesy, to the continuance. So I'm going to go ahead and request that continuance, that this hearing, public hearing, be continued. That is item number 29 to January 22nd.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you.
We'll go back to 28. Start with disclosures, please.
Still just staff.
Staff only. Staff.
No contact.
Staff.
Chief.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor and members of council, Pete Lawrence, Division Chief with the Fire Department. And we're here to talk about fee adjustments that are necessary in order for us to appropriately be charging for services and cost recovery. So we're recommending that you adopt 3 resolutions. 1 amends the development processing fee schedule. 1 updates the fees for fire and emergency services responses. And 1 sets a non-resident fee for the junior lifeguard program. Again, I want to make sure that the operative word here is adjustments, because some of the fees that we are recommending are actually reduced or eliminated completely. We're trying to right-size the fees, especially in our Fire Prevention Bureau, to ensure that only the time necessary to do the review or do the inspection is being charged to the developer or the occupants. So we're trying to get an accurate cost recovery for fire apparatus when we go on responses like DUIs. We're trying to align the non-resident fees within the lifeguard program, the junior guard program, with the other recreation programs within the city, and our ambulance fees that both have a resident, non-resident component. We're trying to recover costs for new inspection requirements, non-mandated, where the public comes to us and asks for an inspection or a plan review to be completed. We're also trying to make sure that ongoing violations, people who will not fix the problem on the first or second trip, we're having to come back and see them 3 times, 4 times, that we have a cost recovery process. And provide a mechanism to recover costs associated with special event responses and teams that we have to provide. So we're trying to add the EMTs to the fee schedule. If you remember, you signed the EMT program to the fire department with the enhanced service delivery program. That has previously not been in our fee schedule, so we're adding that position to the program. And I do want to take this time to tell you that the EMT enhanced service delivery program is performing better than expected and is producing more revenue than expected. We're changing our apparatus designations. Right now, FEMA, when we go on a response, FEMA is classifying them by the gallons per minute of the pump. Now they have a typing category which matches what California uses. Apparatus are typed, and that includes all of the equipment, all of the training, all the personnel necessary to respond to the call. Additionally, items such as a jet ski were previously not in the fee schedule, and so when we are doing surf contests and things like Ironman, we didn't have a mechanism to charge for the personal watercraft that the lifeguards were using. We contract with Northcom to provide our dispatch services, and we essentially have a per dispatch fee of approximately $66, and that previously has not been attributed to the cost recovery process for DUI responses, driving under the influence, and this will now add that to it because it is directly related to the cost of the response. Additionally, we are implementing a $20 non-resident fee for the junior lifeguard program. Approximately 41% of the individuals who attend our junior guard program, which is sold out every year, are non-residents. This, again, aligns with the recreation department non-resident and the fire department non-resident for ambulance. And it will provide a little bit of additional revenue for the lifeguard program to manage that junior guard. Very successful program. We have some licensed care facilities that there's some state mandated fees, and so we're assigning a charge to it. We are reducing the fees for inspections of small tenant improvements. In many cases, there is a need, if they change the interior design of a structure, there's a need to add 1 or 2 sprinkler heads. Or there's a change in the alarm system that is going from a wired system to a wireless system. Previously, we used to have to charge them the $1,000 fee because we had a standard fee for between 0 and 5,000 square feet. Now, if it's less than 20 heads, we'll be able to charge them a $220 fee versus that $1,000 fee because we're not spending that much time on a very small review. We have people that require repeat inspections. They do not comply when we tell them that they have a violation. We go back multiple times, and so this establishes an additional fee if we go back on the third and subsequent times to get them to comply. We also have times that individuals come to us for non-mandated inspections. In some cases, it's a licensed care facility or assisted living under 6 home, and they need to have something for their insurance company or they need something for the state. So they are coming to us and asking us to do this inspection. We now have a mechanism to charge a fee for it and provide the service. In other cases, developers come to us and ask that we could review in advance of them submitting the plans. They want an evaluation of what might be needed so that they can have their contractor for the sprinkler system, for the fire protection engineering systems, ensure that it is in full compliance when it is submitted. So we now have a mechanism when they come to us with their non-mandated request, we can approve the plans, or not approve the plans, but give them guidance without having them submit it at first. Also, to ensure a little bit better compliance and also provide some public benefit, we're completely eliminating the fees for barbecue inspections, barbecue pit barbecues, so that we will have an opportunity to go out and inspect where in the residence, in their backyard, they're doing the pit barbecue, and we will get the opportunity to deal with them prior to them lighting off whatever is going on in the backyard and our engine company coming out to respond. Additionally, the Safe Sidewalks Act did street vendors, the sidewalk, it's a very small food trailers that are used by many of the nonprofits, et cetera. We are eliminating the inspection fee if they come to us. If they come to us and set up a time, one of our inspectors who's in admin can walk down. It's a very short inspection, and we can do that at no cost. Again, the goal is to ensure compliance. So we have the safe sidewalks when we have individuals contracting with a barbecue or a taco trailer. So those are being reduced to 0. With regards to special events, the fire department provides a lot of services, both in soccer events and in the turkey trot, Ironman, in surf contests, et cetera. We have a wide variety of teams that handle things such as bike medics for very large crowds. We have SWAT medics. We have rescue swimmers. All of those require us to train, equip, and then we have to schedule and bill. And there's not been a mechanism to do that until now. So we are recommending a reimbursement mechanism called an administrative fee. And it's equal to what we do for when we respond to state and federal wildland fires. It's a process that is approved. It goes through an established accounting procedure, and it's updated every year based on our budget. This would be charged as necessary to the special events in order to provide the equipment and the training, the scheduling and the billing for those events that otherwise is absorbed by us. So for example, soccer tournaments, we have to change the tires out on our gators because they have to be a specified PSI and a width in order to not destroy the turf, things such as that. So the fiscal impact, it's not a lot. Again, we're trying to right-size things. The fire prevention fees ultimately will pretty much be a wash because we're reducing some fees. And most of the others, we were charging something, but it wasn't called an appropriate thing. We were just using a catch-all. So now we're being a little more specific. We're looking at about $27,000 in revenue, of which $3,500 is from the third inspection trip. We're hoping that that's going to reduce the amount of time our inspectors are taking simply because previously we kept going back for free. The dispatch fee with the DUI should generate a little shy of $4,000. The special event admin fee will be about $13,000, and obviously it depends on whether or not the council has waived fees or we have a contract. And then the non-resident junior guard fee will generate about $6,600 in revenue and allow our lifeguard division to more adequately cover the service. So our recommendation again is that we're recommending the City Council adopt 3 specific resolutions because that's where our fees are contained. Amending the development processing fee schedule for fire prevention, updating the fees for fire and emergency services, and setting a non-resident fee for the junior lifeguard program. You'll notice if you read through the resolutions, a lot of them have automatic updaters to them. So for example, when the salary and benefits are approved by council for employees, that automatically changes. When FEMA changes the rates for equipment, that changes. Items like dispatch, when they change their per call response, that changes. So at this point, finishes the presentation. I have Chief Parsons, who's our fire marshal, and I have Captain Bill Curtis from the lifeguard division, and we'll be prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any public?
No public.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
I got a question for Bill Curtis. I just want to know how your wife's ankle is. No, I didn't.
Thank you.
I had a good
This isn't a
meeting
public
this morning.
hearing, Jimmy.
Okay, it says under public hearing items.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Jimmy Nutt, 127 Sherry Lane. I won the presentation, listening through it. I did not see any fee waiver system being offered or any adjustment system being offered or any exemption being offered for any low income or special circumstances. The reason why, as an example, you may have some self-service provision. Like as an example, we have a number of people who are retired that may have a certification like an EMT or paramedic or have been former firefighters that could take and step in and do some of the items that were mentioned today. Also, there could be an event that would not necessitate or something like that, for their home that just needs to be just signed off instead of just being inspected. So those are just a few things that need to be looked at in the presentation and also would be brought out. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll close the public input portion. And come back to Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thank you. I had a great meeting this morning to understand all of the needs of these, and most of the larger items are typically, some of them are reduced drastically because it's something that just makes sense. It doesn't need to, you don't need to bill for a whole house when you're just doing a one sprinkler head or something in that general way of spending people's hard-earned money. You're talking about something very simple in that case. As far, I got distracted for what I wanted to say, because this is about when we're called into action. Not plenty of times people go out and respond to injured people on their own, but most of the time they're not going to do it because of liability. So what I think Jimmy was talking about is incumbent on all of us to try to help where we can, but this is about sending a truck to various events. So I move approval.
Second.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you some follow-up questions here. The admin fee for special events, I didn't understand that. You're proposing a 17.5% of the cost. The cost of what?
So, Honorable Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Sanchez, the admin fee will be applied to the fire department costs of personnel. So, for example, if we had $100 worth of cost, we would be charging $17.50 in addition to that to cover the equipping and training and scheduling and billing of those people. That's where that
So this
fee
is
would
an
be.
additional cost?
Correct.
Okay, so if a special event doesn't require any kind of response from the fire department, then it's zero?
If we do not have any personnel assigned to that event,
Right.
it is a zero charge.
Okay, because the way it sounded like admin fee, it sounded like a flat fee, but then it says a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little confusing. And then I have a question about the community requested inspection not required by OFD. Say a person is concerned about, it's a weed abatement issue, fires, and they see a bunch of weeds that are really dry, and they call it in as a complaint. That would not generate a fee to that person calling in the complaint, correct?
Correct. That is part of our annual and our standard process of responding to citizen requests. The self-initiated public requested fees are more for inspections, and Chief Parsons can address it if I miss it. They're for things where...
If you could give some examples of what a community requested inspection is.
Yeah, and I'll let Chief Parsons address that.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, and Councilmember Sanchez, Dave Parsons, Fire Marshal and Division Chief of Community Risk Fire Prevention. So we'll get requests from the public. Oftentimes it might be it could be a licensed care facility that has an insurance requirement. So it's not something mandated by the state, which drives a lot of our operation in terms of inspections that we have to do. It's something they need for an operation outside of the fire code or outside of our normal required duties. So we aren't requiring it. It's something they need and they're requesting it. So we're just asking, we're happy to do the work, we want to do the work, but we're just asking for cost recovery on those items. It could be an insurance requirement, or it could be another regulatory agency that really doesn't have anything to do with the fire department.
So going back to my example of a weed abatement call, someone concerned about someone not maintaining their hill or something on their property, clearly a residential, you would not be charging to go out there to inspect it and then to give like a notice, correct?
Councilmember Sanchez, that's correct. In fact, the process actually starts with code enforcement.
Okay.
The fire department, we work with code enforcement on that, and we give them our expertise, and at times we'll do co-inspections. There's no fee, no charge associated with that. That's part of regular business. And then code enforcement has their process that they go through to then gain compliance. And at this point, there's abatement is done through a fee structure or citation structure. There's no forced abatement through another outside agency like we've had in the past.
Thank you. And with respect to the sidewalk vendor inspection on site, was that anticipated as in response to the state passing a law about allowing street vendors?
That's correct. The Safe
Okay.
Streets Act is a requirement now, requirement to inspect. There's been some unfortunate incidents that have driven that at the state level and the national level, injuries and deaths associated with street vendors, carts, things like that. So evaluating it, I wanted to give the option to, knowing that these are not high dollar generating businesses,
Right.
and we want to encourage business in the city, in the community. I wanted to give them the option. If it's a cart, there's no reason to apply the staff time and materials to at full cost to go out to them for what could be a very simple, quick inspection. So I've developed a way to give them the option to come to us. We'll take care of business and get them on their way, and hopefully in business as quick as possible.
And these carts, you're anticipating they're probably hot food type?
Correct. We've done one already in this method, and it was a towable smoker, meat smoker, and they've been doing business actually on the side of the road, and now it's a new requirement. They wanted to comply, made the phone call, and we said, let's give this a try. Come on by and let's look at your facility, and it worked out very well.
They were smiling, I'm sure, that you
Yes.
didn't charge.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well, thank you very much for that. And I appreciate the cost recovery aspect, and also for the benefits for the community, and ensuring that people are complying and not wanting to not make that call because it might be a couple of $100s or something. So thank you. I'll be able to support this.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
We'll go back to item 26, which is resolutions related to the general municipal election to be held on November 3rd, 2020.
Honorable Mayor, Council members, Vida Pavalas, Assistant City Clerk. We are here today in regards to the general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd of 2020, regarding the term limits for the mayor and council members. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt 3 resolutions related to the general municipal election to be held in November of 2020. First resolution is calling and giving notice of general municipal election for the proposed measure ballot establishing term limits for members of the City Council and the mayor. 2, requesting San Diego County Board of Supervisors to consolidate the general municipal election with a statewide general election. 3, setting priorities for filing arguments and rebuttals and directing city attorney to prepare impartial analysis, and introduce an ordinance adding Article 17, Section 2.94 of Chapter 2 of the Oceanside City Code to establish term limits for the members of the City Council and the mayor. A quick background on the item. At the June 5th, 2019 regular council meeting, council directed staff to schedule a workshop to specifically discuss City Council term limits. City Council campaign contributions, City Council salaries, and council aids. At the September 18, 2019 Mayor and Council workshop, Council directed staff to prepare a proposed measure establishing term limits for members of the City Council and the Mayor on the statewide November 2020 election. The direction included establishing, subject to a voter approval, a free term limit for the offices of the mayor and council members. At this time, staff recommends to approve the three resolutions that were identified earlier and introduce an ordinance adding Article 17, Section 2.94 to Chapter 2 of the Oceanside City Code to establish term limits for the members of the City Council and the mayor. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Do we have speakers?
We have one speaker, Arlene Hammerschmidt.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I just want to say congratulations. Something really positive came out of that council workshop regarding potential amendments to our charter. And it was, I just like, yay. People came out, people talked. It was at 6 p.m. People were engaged. And this is one of the positive results of that workshop. And I support it. I support it as is, and I hope this will pass 5-1. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Sanchez?
She meant 5-0, yes. This did come out of a workshop, and what was directed, I believe it was a 4-1 vote at the time, but yeah, this is something that moves us forward in terms of term elections, term limits. We discussed the potential for having 2 4-year term limits, and instead we came up with 3 4-year term limits. And the reasons that we talked about, we discussed that, the reasons being that sometimes it takes longer than 8 years to get something through a process, especially if we're if our intent is to be as transparent and working with the community on moving projects forward. So I'm going to move that we adopt the resolutions and introduce the ordinance.
Deputy Mayor Feller?
Thank you. So that means I can start a new 12 years next
That's right.
2020, right? Okay. We do not have, at this point, Am I interrupting you? We do not have at this point a decision on clerk or treasurer. Is there a time frame that I mean, we're doing this fairly early. Is there a time frame that this has to be done for, or possibly be done for clerk or treasurer if?
So I think what you're asking is, when's the latest you could consider this? Is that right?
For clerk and treasurer.
Well, clerk and treasurer is already on the ballot, so it's in March.
No, I'm
He's talking about if it fails.
If it fails.
To amend this to add in clerk and treasurer?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's 88 days is before the November election is the deadline. Is that right, Vida?
That's all I got. Thanks.
Ready?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Mullen?
Okay, you have the election resolutions we're actually needing to introduce and then subsequently adopt the municipal code section that will be before the voters. So this is the introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside, adding Article 17, Section 2.94 to Chapter 2 of the Oceanside City Code to establish term limits for the members of the Oceanside City Council and Mayor.
Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
So we'll go to item 27, which is an item regarding a proposed council policy regarding filling of an elected official vacancy.
Honorable Mayor, council members, Vida Pavalas, Assistant City Clerk. Just This item is in front of you in regards to elected official vacancy process. A vacancy in a city elected office is required to be filled by either appointment or by calling a special election. If a council chooses to fill a vacancy by appointment, the proposed policy specifies steps in regards to the process that includes applications, requirements, public notice, interview, selection process, and the terms. The policy generally follows a process that the city council uses for a planning commission, and it's commonly used among other cities. At this time, staff recommends that the city council adopt the proposed policy to provide guidance on the filling of elected official vacancies, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. We have speakers?
We have two speakers. Our first speaker is Joe Hill, to be followed by Arlene Hammerschmidt.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members. I want to echo what Arlene said about the item of term limits. Very good and a forward position as far as the city and the way we look at all of our election processes. On this particular item, there was a couple of things that I noticed that it didn't look like there was a lot of public input involved. I mean, I thank Vida and all you folks and the staff for all of the hard work on this, because it's something that's necessary and needed. But I'm wondering if possibly once the applications are all received, there could maybe be a portal of some type on the website, the city website, so that the public could actually see who the people were and see what the qualifications were. I mean, you don't want to overthink it so that the public is so involved that we never make a decision, but I think they at least could have an idea of who applied and see what they have to offer as far as their qualifications before you folks interview them, because I know you're all going to interview them, which is great. And then the other thing that we seem to not have come to an agreement totally on is the workshops. I know it's going to go to a workshop so you can make the interviews happen, but we seem to be back and forth about what time the workshops should be. And on something as important as filling an elected position or an appointment, I think that the public should be allowed to participate more by possibly coming at a 6 o'clock meeting. Now, I know 3 o'clock is the normal time that you have workshops, but
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. If you think about a position as important as filling a council position, then I think that the 6 o'clock possibly should be just a rule. Just make that part of the ordinance. Make it part of what you guys have checked out. Say that the workshop for any elected position would be at 6 o'clock. And I think you'll get more receptive feedback from the public on that. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Joe kind of said everything that I was going to say, but that's okay. Reminders that this process does pretty much follow the appointment process for an appointed position on the Planning Commission. However, there's a difference. We're talking about elected positions and following a process that's been established for an appointed position. So my concern is, let's be sure that we inject, invite, solicit, welcome public to be there and be engaged and be informed. I realize it could turn into a catastrophic blow up if the public was allowed to ask questions. However, let's make the qualifications and the applications of the applicants readily and easily available, please, on the website to any interested party who'd like to know. Because then we have valid information to possibly email you all in support or opposition of anyone who has applied. So that's the one piece that I would like to see added, is honoring and inviting the public. And that will really build And then the second piece is the transparency piece, making it easy to find on the website. And that'll build a positive relationship between our residents and the governance of our community. The other thing is, I would really like to see, in addition to the ordinance, that there shall only be one appointed member of City Council at a time. Only one. Because when the appointed start making the appointments, then the public loses our representation. And that's a definite bone of ill content. So that's it. Thank you very much, all of you. And Ms. Ryan Keim, thank you very much for taking this and bringing it forward. And I look forward to Oceanside actually being a leader in North County of having a guiding policy for council for the appointment process for elected positions. That's awesome. It's time for Oceanside to be a leader. Time for us. Thank you.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. And I actually was thinking the same way, that I did expect to have more input from the public on a process. I followed the City of Carlsbad process for filling the vacancy that was made by the departure of Councilmember Barbara Hamilton. And I thought it was quite interesting that they have a process whereby the public has a right to go ahead and collect signatures to be able to have an election rather than go ahead and have an appointment. So that was interesting, and I actually expected a more thorough report, like what other cities do, for example, even within the county, on how we fill vacancies. I also had a conversation earlier in the year, maybe last year, regarding the replacement of a person in the mayor's office, especially if they've only served 1 year and they have almost 3 years left. I actually thought in that situation, especially for that position, which is the leader of the city, there ought to have been a requirement that be placed on the ballot. So this is kind of like a minimum, like, okay, let's go ahead and at least follow a process of appointment that is similar to what we do for Planning Commission. And in fact, that's what I did. I went through that kind of a process when I interviewed people. I asked the kind of questions that were generally asked within a Planning Commission interview, and then had an overall kind of open question. Is there anything else that you would like to add for me to consider? In terms of how I will vote in the replacement. So, this is kind of a minimum kind of requirement, but I would like to see more. I would like to see that we look at what other cities do. I liked what Carlsbad did, that it gave the community an opportunity to say, no, we would like to see this person elected. So, especially she served less than a year. Barbara Hamilton, Councilmember Barbara Hamilton in Carlsbad. So I may support this if there is no, because this is not a time of the essence issue. I'd like to, instead of just adopting this right now, I'd like to, do a little more work in terms of seeing what other cities do. But certainly for the mayor's race, after 1 year or before 1 year, I think that we ought to require an election. So those are my comments.
Mr. Mullen, if you could verify, please. It's my understanding this policy would only come into play if the council chose to fill the position by appointment versus calling a special election.
That's right. The direction from the council was to develop a policy once you've made the selection to appoint, not when you should appoint versus when you should call a special election. That's within your discretion. We could have a local ordinance, as Carlsbad does. But the policy before you really is based on the direction to develop a uniform policy, assuming you're going to make the decision to appoint. Now, if you had a vacancy now, you've already have 2 appointees. You can't appoint a 3rd member. So you're right, it's not time is of the essence.
Councilmember Klein.
First, I want to thank staff for putting this together, and I think the information was out there. I spoke with council members and staff from other cities. It was San Marcos, Encinitas, and El Cajon, all 3 followed this similar process. So I would imagine that's partly where this came from. I thought they had fairly successful outcomes looking at that, and they all went different directions. But so that information was available, and I think we did follow that pretty closely. And I don't think we're going to get something perfect, but it's going to be, we're going to have this issue. And I wish one of the things I could fix was people not running from safe seats for things like the mayor, because that's going to create a vacancy. And we know that's coming. So those are things that I don't think we can fix every problem, but it is, this is a good step. We had public input. I think that's politics. I don't think you get everything you want. You get something, you get a good product that everyone can go forward with, and I think this is it. If this needs to be fine-tuned or adjusted, I think we can do that as well. I'm also open to 6 o'clock as well, like we did with the term limit. So I think this is a very good start. I think staff put together an efficient, effective, and transparent process, and that's what this is, an open public forum. People are going to see who applied, resumes. It's all going to be out there, and I really think it's going to build trust, and it's a good start for us. So I'll make a motion. And also I'd like to thank Councilman Rodriguez for partnering with me on this. It was a good effort to show our desire to include the public and do everything we can to build that relationship. So thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez. Just want to second that motion. Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thank you. I agree with the making the applications accessible. Whether it's, I don't know if that's private information, but once they apply, if it's something that can actually be readily accessible on the website.
So if you, I'll answer the first part of that question. The first line of attachment 2 on the application says that it's a public record.
Okay.
And advises the applicants it would be a public record. I imagine the clerk would have no trouble putting a link on the site to list all the applications.
Sure. And as far as the planning interviews, I've sat in on them for 19 years. And we've interviewed council members over the period of time for appointment. But if a council member sits up here on these planning interviews, and it's happened many times, they don't like the candidate, they don't ask any questions. And that's happened many times. And the policy we have is everybody's really supposed to ask the same question of every candidate. And if they don't ask a question, they're just telling you outright that that is not their candidate. Most of this appointment stuff has come from people jumping from seat to seat, whether it's into the assembly, into the State Department. Unfortunately, and my heart goes out to Jim for being incapacitated and having that put a physical ailment put on it, upon him. But that's only one instance where, out of these last several years, where we had to do it in 2004. We had an election of Sherry Mackin in 2005. Because the mayor went from safe seat to run for the mayor's position. The same thing happened again in 2010. So we've had many of these, and I'm willing to go along with this, but I think even as Hammerschmidt said, it would be very difficult if the public was making input on every one of these candidates. They can look at them, they're free to send every email in the world, they do anyway, so they can give us feedback in that regard, because it will be readily accessible. So I'm happy to support this as it goes forward.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. Well, the public would be allowed to speak on this item at whether it's a workshop, what we call it a workshop, or a hearing. The public will have a right to be heard. And I did follow this process as I indicated, and I did urge my colleagues to follow that kind of a process. And I talked about what a process we already had was for the Planning Commission, and unfortunately no one else wanted to do that on the dais. So I'm really glad that that attitude changed. But we did have a broader conversation when this was brought up, and I still feel very strongly that we ought to be looking at it at the very least for the mayor, that we ought to be saying that that person ought to be to have an election if there's more than 2 years left on their term. We also appointed when a deceased person won for the city treasurer. So we actually have had more than just Jim not being able to fulfill the rest of his term. And that was certainly interesting that at the time members of the dais were urging people to vote for someone who had passed away after the deadline for being able to withdraw the name from the ballot. So this is like the minimum mandatory that I would call minimum mandatory for the interview or for doing an appointment, and I will support it. But I think it's a very basic minimum, and we ought to do more. And I think we should add the 6 o'clock, that this should be on at 6 o'clock, so that these are very important, especially since we're talking about district elections and people only being able to vote in those in the districts once every 4 years. Now it becomes extremely critical for these folks to be able to participate in the process, and at least let's add the 6 o'clock for those who work and are stuck in traffic, and consider doing more down the line. So can we amend I'd like to make an amendment to the motion, which is to add that this workshop will be held at 6 o'clock. It's an amendment to the motion.
Does the maker of the motion want to consider that amendment?
At this point, if it's limited to council appointment process for 6 o'clock public hearing, I'd be amenable to that. Amenable. I also want to second to second the amendment, and if we could, if we can release something publicly, whatever we can, that follows the process, I would be willing to entertain that too.
It's already going to be made public.
Okay.
Does the second agree with the 6 o'clock for a council appointment?
No, I did. Yeah, I to be honest with me, my opinion, I'll agree with it, but to me, the future council at that future time should be able to make that decision. We shouldn't set all these restrictions on them. So, I mean, what do you want to amend it, or let's just leave it simple and let them decide in the future?
For me, this is an easy issue too. If it's that important, I think we can do it.
I mean, if we're setting this precedent on this, then we're going to do it on that. Like, let's just leave it flexible is my take on it. Let's just keep it simple, leave it as is, and at that future time, we can say 6 o'clock. Makes sense.
There was a second on the amendment, so we ought to at least vote on the amendment.
It's not, no, he has to agree to the amendment.
No, an amendment to a motion is,
There was a motion on the floor.
Right.
If you want to change his motion, he has to, both the motion maker and the second need to agree to that amendment.
no, well, point of order, Robert's rules. There's amendment to the motion. There's a motion to amend the main motion. There was a second to that. So there's a vote on whether to adopt the amendment to the motion.
Well, we go by Chapter 2, not necessarily Robert's Rule, but yes, an amendment to a main motion would take priority over the main motion, and if it doesn't substantially change it, then it would be in order. And so if the amendment is agreed to, if there's a second to it, then it can proceed. So we can go forward with basically the motion to adopt this council policy with the amendment. And if it doesn't pass, then you could come back and reconsider it without that provision.
Okay, so we have a motion.
No, we just vote on the amendment.
We're just going to vote on the amended motion that says add 6 o'clock.
And then on the motion.
So we're voting to add 6 o'clock, period. So there's a motion with a second. Please vote.
Motion fails 2-3. Weiss, Rodriguez, Feller, no.
So we'll go back to the first motion to adopt the policy as is, and I agree with Councilmember Rodriguez, the future council should decide when to have the workshop. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Which is a recommendation for appointments to the council members to boards, commissions, and committees, and I'll make a motion to approve them as submitted. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 4-0.
Mr. Mullen?
Item 33 is the second read and adoption of an ordinance of the City of Oceanside amending Chapter 6 and Chapter 11 of the Oceanside City Code by the adoption of the 2019 editions of the California Building, Residential, Electrical, Mechanical, Plumbing, Energy, Green Building Standards, and Fire Codes.
I'll move adoption. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Mr. Mullen?
Item 34 is the second read and adoption of an ordinance of the City of Oceanside, California, amending the Elkhorn Zone specific plan to adjust the land use area acreages consistent with actual build-out data, shift street AA to the east, and add the term arenas to the commercial recreation and entertainment definition of allowable uses within the Village Commercial VC Zone District.
I'll move adoption. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
And with that, we will adjourn to 3:30 on...
Comments?
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. For me, I did attend the Sandag Count Me Census 2020 working group meeting, and so we're moving full ahead on ensuring that we have the most accurate count in Oceanside. I also attended the FACO Phil-Am Holiday Ball, where we did a presentation on the Count Me 2020. I also attended the Regional Task Force on Homelessness. Basically what the group decided was to reach a goal of sheltering 50% of those that are homeless, unsheltered homeless, which at this point it's 1,000, so 50% of that would be 500, and that would be region-wide in the North County, and to do that within 2 years. So there was a lot of discussion around the table from all the cities, and basically we have all agreed to look at that and see how we can accomplish that. The county was present. some of the discussion had to do with the mentally ill and how the county can assist us in addressing the issues of the homeless that have mental illness. So there's discussion about approaching the Office of the District Attorney, but also the Office of County Council with respect to conservatorships and boards and cares. So there's a whole lot of discussion about right now with the county at different levels on addressing the mentally ill. And so at this time, I want to say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, and also Happy New Year. It's been, there's been a lot of work on addressing our homeless issues. We're continuing to do that. I think also our biggest challenge, which is to get more businesses in Oceanside, get more jobs in Oceanside, is something that we continue to be challenged with, and I'm hoping that we do a better job of that next year. And everybody keep safe and stay well, and I'll see you next year.
Seeing no other lights, we will adjourn to 3:30 on Wednesday, January 8th, 2020.